Hi everybody, my name's Bob Saunders and I'm here today to talk to you about something that's either extremely important or utter rubbish. And I'm not sure what it is. I've called it the alien invasion of Earth. Now, some of you will know what I'm talking about, others won't. For those who don't know, I'll very quickly explain. The concept is that for many years now there's been an alien race, more than one, that have been here interacting with various governments, and they've got a secret agenda, these aliens, that they want to create a hybrid race using our bodies and their minds to take over the Earth. Let us sort of die out and they'll populate the planet Earth. Now, I know it sounds like pure science fiction, but apparently it may not be, and this is why I'm talking about it. I wouldn't waste your time and mine if I thought it was pure science fiction. Now the problem is, I don't think anybody has got any actual proof. I don't think even the military people that work with these aliens actually know what's going on. So all we can do is put what little evidence we've got together and see if it makes sense. Okay, so let's have a look at it. Now, do aliens exist? Well, if you spent any time on the internet looking at various videos of flying saucers and all the rest of it, you see these little lights in the sky and you see various flying saucers, and you don't know what's true and what's been made in Photoshop and all the rest. Now, the only two people that I can trust is my wife and myself. Now, many years ago we used to have a farm in the foothills of the Pyrenees Mountains in the south of France, and one evening my wife was coming home from a theatrical thing she used to do in the local village a few miles away, and as she approached our farm, she saw in a very shallow valley that wasn't very far from our house, she saw some orange lights, and as she sort of turned her vehicle to come into our land, the headlights picked up a flying saucer. Now, she said it was about 150 feet across, sort of 50 yards if you like, and she said it was perfectly still and hovering slightly off the ground with no noise, making no noise. And she sat and watched it for a few minutes, then she got a bit frightened and she turned down the road that goes towards our house, and so the flying saucer was on her left now, and she passed it quite close, and as she did so it suddenly started to make a faint noise. She had it was summertime and she had the window of the vehicle down. We're on the left hand side because we're in France. It was on the window was down, and she heard this faint noise. The only way she could describe it was that it was a mixture between, she said, if you stand by a very busy road where there's huge lorries going past, trucks, she said, you get this deep noise off the engines, but you also get a high-pitched noise, maybe from turbos or from the sound of the tyres. So you get this mixture of a low noise and a high noise. She said that's all she could describe it as. And it wasn't very loud, it wasn't pulsating, and it just this noise. And suddenly she said she saw the flying saucer lift up and turn on its side, sort of like I'm looking at a screen as I'm talking to it, turn on the side and start to go up in the air, and all of a sudden it was gone. And within 30 seconds she was home and she was telling me all about it. Now, that's her story, and I don't think she was lying. Now, on the 10th of December, today when I'm speaking to you is the 21st of July 2014, and on the 10th of December 2013, it's about 6 months ago now, we now live in a big old house that's not far from the foothills of the Pyrenees Mountains, and our front door faces east, so I've got the Pyrenees Mountains on my right, and to the south and north is the opposite side, obviously. Now, to shut up our house, we've got like a double street door. It's a big old house, and it's a double street door, and then outside there's some wooden shutters that I shut in the evening. And I went out to shut these wooden shutters, and it was 8 o'clock in the evening. It was a perfectly clear night. The moon was shining extremely bright. It was almost a full moon. It was so bright you couldn't see any stars, and it had a kind of a halo around it. I don't know if you know what I mean. If you could imagine the moon, and there's like a halo of almost like mist around it, okay? And for some reason, I just stood for a few seconds and looked at the moon, and to my amazement, coming from the north, going south towards the Pyrenees Mountains, came a flying saucer. It was amazing, and it was, I can only describe it as like a pie dish shape. It had a certain thickness to it. It was flat underneath, had a certain thickness to it, and maybe a little dome on top. But once again, it was tipped up, okay? And it was gunmetal grey, perfectly non-reflective, and this is the amazing thing. It was going along a bit on its side, and it was hopping like this. And this is why I could see it so clearly, because if you can imagine the moon there and the halo around it, this flying saucer must have been quite low, because it looked about the size of the moon. Obviously it wasn't, but it could, that visual effect, because it was much lower. And it was doing this strange little hopping thing. So it took about maybe 15 seconds to go through the halo this side, through the light of the moon, and through the halo the other side. And all the time I could see it perfectly clearly. As soon as it went into the blackness on the other side, it totally disappeared. I couldn't see it at all. It was like it wasn't there. But I saw that. Now, so I know that flying saucers exist. If they exist, now, I don't know if this one was an American-made one or whether it was a true alien one. I've got no means of saying that. But one thing is sure and certain, it wasn't our technology. This wasn't a Boeing 747 or so. This was a flying saucer. And it's alien technology, obviously. So aliens must be here. That's my conclusion. Now, the thing is, if they're here, what are they coming for? Everybody, if they made all the effort to come to us, they want something. Now, experience tells me that when people make the effort to go from one place to another, they want something, and it's usually not to the advantage of the people that they're invading. Just for one example, when the Spanish invaded America, they didn't go all that way, halfway around the world, to bring them some Spanish onions and a bottle of sangria. They went there to steal all the gold from the Incas, to enslave the people and to do horrible things. And history tells us what they did, and it was disgusting. But that's what happens. Now, these aliens are coming for a reason. It's up to us to try and find out what that reason is. Okay? And this is what this little video is all about. Sorry, as usual, I've always got notes. Now, I'm going to talk about animal and human mutilations. If you've looked on internet, you will see that there are countless videos where you see cows and horses and sheep and actually, unfortunately, human beings terribly, terribly mutilated. All their blood is gone. They've cut lumps off their face, they dig out eyes, they core out ears, they core out rectums and take the sexual organs, and there's some evidence that this is done while the animals or the humans are alive and conscious. Now, can you imagine that? Can you imagine what manner of creatures would do such a thing? And this has been going on for a long time. It's not just a 5-minute thing, the recent months and a few years. This has been going on for a long time. So somebody is here taking genetic material from animals and humans. What do they want it for? Okay. Now, next one I'm going to look at, abductions. Human abductions and also animal abductions. People have seen, well, people report that they've been taken into flying saucers or into bases somewhere, and they have horrific experiments done on them, genetic materials taken, and there's all this thing about showing hybrid children, and there's been some sightings of cows and so on being just picked up off the ground and disappear into the sky. They're abducting people and animals for some reason. Okay? Now, excuse me, there's a cat just come in meowing, but let's ignore him. Where are we now? I'm losing my thread. Right, and I'm just going on for just a second about all this animal, certainly human abductions. There are underground bases, such as Area 51, apparently, and people that have worked in those areas talk about a place called Nightmare Hall, where the most horrific things are going on. I won't go into details, but once again, if these aliens are doing this sort of thing, I don't think they're very spiritual beings. I can't imagine anybody of a spiritual nature doing such terrible, terrible things to people and animals. But that's just my point of view. Now, there's another aspect to this, that these aliens are able to work in the etheric and astral realms, a bit like mediums can, and they influence people. They influence world leaders, politicians, church leaders, and so on, to implement their agenda, which takes the form of, what they call it, Agenda 21 and the New World Order. Apparently, the people that are the politicians and so on that are presenting this information think it's coming from them, but it's actually coming from these alien people that want this sort of hive mentality installed here on Earth. Now, there's another aspect to it in the astral and etheric realms, that apparently they've got a kind of an artificial intelligence machine going on, and some channelers, I won't say all, some channelers, when they reach out into the etheric and astral realms, they receive a message, and they think it's coming from some high angel, and it's actually coming from a machine that's just giving them garbage. So I'm not going to criticise these people, that's not my place. All I will say is, if you follow some of these channelers, listen carefully to the information and see if it's got that ring of a very high angelic intelligence to it, or whether it's just sort of garbage. And another little clue that you've got is the name of the angelic being giving the information. When you start to get into these angels, I don't know, you start off with Jesus Christ, and I think you go higher and higher and higher. And I even saw one where somebody was channeling Prime Creator, the force that created everything. This person claimed to be channeling. Maybe he or she was. I can't imagine it myself. I think there's something bizarre there, and we need to use our intelligence to cut through the garbage and find out what's true and what's not. Okay? Now, let's go back to these alien creatures. Now, they take the form of little greys, you're probably familiar with them, and people say, oh, they're just robots, because they found dead bodies from time to time with flying saucers crashing, and they've noticed that when they do an autopsy on them, they got a lot of vegetable matter in them. They're not sort of physical in the sense we are, and they're clearly little robots. Then they got some taller grey people, and the taller grey people say, yes, we're the ones in charge, we tell the little robots what to do. I think these taller greys are just another form of robot. I think that the praying mantid type people are just another form of robot, because behind them is another force that you almost never see. One person did manage to see. There was a gentleman that worked for NATO, and a flying saucer crashed somewhere in England, and he was sent out. He worked for a team that was charged with going out and securing the sites of these flying saucers and waiting for Americans to come up and cart the flying saucer off. And he said, while he was stood there, he looked in the window of a flying saucer. He said there were a number of beings, but amongst them, the people that looked in charge, he said you could only describe them as being demons from hell, and he said they were so strong, so powerful, he said they could rip you from limb to limb. Those were his very words. Now, I'm not one of these Southern Baptist Bible punching person at all. I'm a very feet on the ground. I believe in God, but I don't believe in religions very much. But I think there is a place called, well, I don't, it's not hell, it's another area altogether. I think these creatures are possibly coming from what we call the lower fourth dimension, and actually that's not part of hell. Hell is part of the higher fourth dimension. It's under the control of angels, actually. It's just a corrective centre. It's like having a prison in close to a town, if you like. The lower fourth dimension is somewhere altogether different, and I've got a feeling that some of these aliens, at least, are coming from there, and they're what we call demons, archons, I don't know, jinns. I think that's what they are. But now, apparently, these demonic people can't actually live on the surface of our Earth here. They can stay in their spaceships where they got a specially modified environment. They can live in these deep underground bases, or just deep underground somewhere if necessary. They can live in spaceships underwater. They can survive there, but they can't actually live on the surface. That's why when a flying saucer comes down and they want to abduct somebody, they send out these little grey robots to get the people in, because they can't go out themselves. Now, apparently their aim is to create a hybrid race of beings capable with physical bodies, but with their minds, so that they can be here on planet Earth. Okay? Their intention is to gradually get rid of us all. I don't think they're going to kill us off. They're just going to wait for us to die of old age. Probably by that time they will have put in place some system that we can no longer breed ourselves, sterilisation through food and water and stuff, injections and all the rest of it, so we can no longer reproduce ourselves, and they're going to gradually replace us with these hybrids. Now, they've got one major problem. They have no notion of where the Spirit of God part, what I call the God particle, is. They don't, apparently they don't have that. I find it strange that they can be alive and not have this God particle in them, because that's what makes us alive. But apparently they are alive, but they haven't got that, and they never will get that, because that Spirit of God that we've got in us comes from God himself, and only God can give that. And thank goodness for that, because they'll never achieve success. They can create sort of robot creatures, but they won't ever create a fully fledged humanoid with the Spirit of God inside it, but with their mind. All the time they can't get hold of the Spirit of God, and that they won't do. So I'm very grateful for that. Okay, now how can we oppose these creatures? The only way I know is through rising above their level spiritually. They're not very spiritual. Well, they're the opposite of spiritual in my opinion, but they're not stupid, and they've got a lot of power. They're controlling the astral and etheric realms to a great extent. The only way that I know to get above them is by doing meditation and contacting our higher self, which is part of God. It's actually God, it's himself within us, and we can contact that higher self and allow that higher self to become part of our reality. And then I think you'll find that these creatures can't touch us. And I've been for some time now suggesting to people, if they would, that they meditate, because it's the only way that I can think of that we can beat them, unless you've got some other ideas. Okay, now I'm going to shut up. I don't know if the information I've given you makes sense, whether you could, from all the things about the abductions and the mutilations and all blah blah blah, whether that points to the fact that they are trying to create hybrids. I'm sure that they are actually, and people have seen them in the flying saucers. There must be some reason why they're creating these hybrids, and we've actually been told that they intend to take over the planet Earth. We've got to do something about it. If you feel like learning to meditate, I've put a few things online. Be careful with meditation, because it's not something to mess around with. So don't try all this astral stuff. Just if you follow what I've given you, I'm not saying that I'm the best teacher in the world, but what I do know is what I teach is safe to do, and that's all I can say really. You either think that this is a sensible argument that I've put up, or crazy. It's up to you. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me once again, and I'll speak to you another time. Bye.